Hi, I'd like to read you an excerpt based on my field notes back from this summer, and I'd like you to imagine that you're there too. It is close to 5 o'clock, and after a backpack's worth of condom distribution, the NGO social worker and I are about to head in for the day when we run into Joy. The first time we had met during street outreach, after convincing her that I was neither the police nor there to verify her documents, Joy had greeted me with a welcoming bees to each cheek. Now she looks worn and small, reluctant to join her madame, the term for a female Nigerian pimp, and fellow Nigerians up the sidewalk to wait for passing clients. Are things okay? No, things are not fine. I don't want to do this work. A part of me shrivels each time I hear this. I know the response by heart, but ask anyways. What instead? Cleaning work, anything else. Just as soon as she gets her documents. Asylum documents I know she's unlikely to receive. She faces me expectantly, as if not wanting me to leave. We are the same age, both native English speakers planted in the foreign landscape of southern France. Except while I receive a university grant to do work that I love, Joy and many other young Nigerian women working the streets of Marseille want out with no clear solution. In that moment, all I have to offer her is, I'm sorry. Let me give you some background about the women, some of them now friends, I talked with this summer, and the place they now call home. Marseille, as France's second largest city and a historic crossroads, today serves as an important collecting point for migrants traveling to and through France. A distinct strand of these migrants include young Nigerian women and girls who have left Nigeria, crossed the Saharan desert to Libya, crossed the Mediterranean to enter Italy, and then disperse across France and Europe. These women have come to Europe in the name of a better future, but face few job options as undocumented migrants. Women like Joy enter a thorny politics of migration, development, and sexuality as they become human components of smuggling routes and sex industries along their journeys. A host of government, medical, and NGO actors regulates the movement and determines these women's legality. In the worst cases, such infrastructure can inflict profound violence upon vulnerable individuals. At their best, these actors attempt to identify and respond to the needs of these women in patchwork fashion. The overarching question I pose is this. Within circumstances of insecurity and outright violence, what responses of care and what possibilities of healing exist for the Nigerian street worker community in Marseille and beyond? My research lays out the violences that surround such a deadly migration pattern and the process of integration within a host country such as France. I demonstrate how distance management can be used as an intelligent method of survival, but is not always within individual control. And most importantly, I advocate that although care is imperfect and some distances can never be breached, the need to go towards and care for those in vulnerable circumstances is a moral imperative and must be institutionalized in an effective, compassionate, and better manner. As an anthropologist, I sometimes have difficulty explaining to friends that my principal research method is hanging out with people. This summer, I was situated in Marseille for 2.5 months at several different field sites to gain access to the local world of the Nigerian street worker community. Most of my time was spent at a prostitution rehabilitation center, Amicale du Nid, ADN. ADN provides sex workers and those at risk of sex work with access to social services like job opportunities, healthcare, French language classes, asylum applications, communal meals and workshops. ADN is abolitionist, meaning it considers sex workers victims of sexual exploitation and gendered violence, and seeks not just to stabilize beneficiaries, but to get them out of sex work. Approximately 1/3 of ADN beneficiaries at the Marseille branch are Nigerian. When I first arrived, I was intensely curious why there were so many young Black women speaking English in the office. What stories had brought them here? So as a volunteer intern, I joined the street outreach team. We walked and drove around Marseille and nearby towns to places of street work, checked in to see how the sex workers were doing, offered them condoms and lubricant, encouraged them to come to ADN, and chatted for a bit. The only catch was that ADN didn't allow me to interview anyone. For a long while, this felt like a major obstacle. Anthropology is pretty reliant on interviews. But it turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. It pushed me to explore different ways of interacting with these women and different entrances into the texture of their daily lives. Through ADN and other sites, I met several key interlocutors with whom I was able to spend time beyond an institutional setting. Organized over Facebook and phone calls, we met up to explore Marseille and spend time together, cooking meals, exploring beaches and parks, attending church worship, and hanging out at barbershops. I saw how these undocumented women lived with constant anxiety of police discovery and deportation. They would get off buses a mile before their stop, since undocumented and unable to pay for public transportation, they were scared of being deported if caught by ticket agents. I saw how some French citizens targeted them for physical violence and exclusion from public spaces. I saw how much they missed their families during phone calls, and how they grieved the passing of friends who had not been so fortunate to survive the journey here. I saw how proud they were of their Nigerian identity in the meals, pop music, and TV shows they shared. I saw how some tried to find meaning in their situations through faith and a vision of crafting a future in France. My thesis seeks to convey the structural and everyday precarity these women inhabit as undocumented, English-speaking, sex-working Black women in France. In their navigation of instability, understanding the relation between the self and the surrounding environment is key. Oftentimes, these women rely on distance management as a form of self-care. Creating distance from difficult memories, places, people, and attitudes can serve as protection, while nurturing proximity can grow solidarity and support. Although not completely within control, distance management can be used to position oneself intelligently amidst environments of hurt and uncertainty. Distance management is not just a coping strategy, but a form of healing. Many women, particularly those who had managed to stop sex work, had a strong disinclination to dwell on dark moments from the past. Rather, they spoke of not wanting to go back to that place and looking onward to the future. Their desire for distance should not be dismissed, but can instead be considered a valid moment of healing. Sometimes healing is not so much about processing negativity than knowing to not hold it so close anymore. Lastly, I trace the systems of government, NGO, medical, community, and self-care in place for former and current Nigerian sex workers in France. Although patchwork and imperfect, there is a moral necessity for care, including perhaps the care ethnography can offer. To end, I'd like to share a quote, perhaps a direct appeal from Savior, one of the women I met at the Marseille shelters. I just pray that France and the UN should help us with the documents and shouldn't forget us in the shelter here, because it's not easy here. It's not easy. We're just trying to cope because we don't have any other option. Thank you.